Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
Good evening, everyone. This is Bob Pompeani, and we are live in the fan cave at KDKA Plus for the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. The number, as you've known over the years, and it remains the same at 412-575-2600. Hit us up on Twitter at KDPomp, at the Pony Express. Andrew Fillipponi over at 93.7 The Fan. And Andrew, Sidney Crosby hit a goalpost tonight. It would have been career goal number 600. And then after that, the game absolutely went the other direction. They were up 2-0, just like the other night when San Jose came storming back from 3-0. The Sharks aren't the Lightning. The Lightning took advantage of that, tied the game, won it in overtime on a goal by Braden Point, who's a very good player. But, man, Tristan Jarry, although he played better tonight, he was so far out of the net on that play, I couldn't figure out what he was doing. It made it too easy. It was a gimme for a guy like Point.
Well, Bob, first of all, you mentioned the fan. I want to congratulate you on the Pomp and Joe show, for those that don't know.
Thank you.
We're streaming, we're simulcast there right now, and we're going to be seeing and hearing a lot more from you at our station, and we're just tickled pink to have you fully on board here. What credibility you give us, and it loses credibility at 2 o'clock, but it has a lot of it now from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. But
appreciate that.
To your point,
look
you're
forward to
welcome.
being there with Joe, and there's always a lot of give and take. So the days that I am there,
Yep.
and it'll be kind of, we'll see how it goes based on everything else, but I'm looking forward to it. But thanks.
But yeah, so as far as the game goes, it's Groundhog Day. It's deja vu for this team, and we've now reached the quarter point of the season. They've played 21 games in an 82-game season, and so you can't just write it off as early season hiccups or early season for an older veteran team trying to shake the cobwebs out. I think this is who you are. And they've given up more goals per game than any team in the NHL. They've gotten the worst goaltending. And Jarry, I mean, what an embarrassing thing to say. And I'm not blaming you, Bob, but, I'm hearing some of the commentary on his start. Well, he was much better. He blew a 2-goal lead in the third period in overtime, and I would say at least 2 of those goals were soft goals. Another blown third period lead. They have the lowest point percentage of any team in the Metro Division. That includes the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Philadelphia Flyers. This is the worst Penguins team since Sidney Crosby's rookie year when they were rebuilding. And I would say, as far as relevance, Bob, how interested people are, it's really the least people have cared since before Sid got there. I would go back to the early 2000s. I mean, it is just a ghost town over there weeknights now, and it's just sad that we've come to this, that these guys are still here, these remnants from Stanley Cup teams, but they're nowhere close to being a playoff team right now, let alone a Stanley Cup contender.
Yeah, and, the fact that Crosby's chasing 600, you would have thought with Tampa in town, Gensel makes his return, and that would have been – but there were a lot of empty rows. I was over there, I saw that, and that's just been the way it is. But, again, when you're losing the way they're losing, and they've now won only 7 of the first 21 games, that kind of stuff is ultimately what decides what people will do, especially on a weeknight. So, bottom line here is, as much as I want to say Tristan, that last goal was ridiculous where he was. He was way out. You don't do that. You stay in your goal, and you let the guys in front of you fend off Braden Point, who's coming in there. And he had, as I said, a gimme. We'll show you at 11 o'clock what that looked like. But in the meantime, how is it that the first 8 minutes of the third period they get no shots on goal? How is it that they get dominated in that department by Tampa Bay when you're trying to protect the lead like that? Bottom line is they didn't do a good enough job in front of Jarry again throughout the course of the game. And I'm talking about putting pressure on Andrei Vasilevsky. Hardly any tonight.
Right, they had 19 shots. Okay, that's not going to win. They were lucky to have 2 goals. One was on the power play. Okay, so that to me, again, speaks volumes to how they stack up or measure up against a good team. Yeah, the game went to overtime. They got a loser point, but just the eye test tells me they're not in the same league as that team. Okay, you mentioned the situation there tonight. Boston has 8 wins in fewer games. They fired Jim Montgomery today, their head coach. They won a playoff series last year, and 2 years ago, Bob, they set the record for most points in a regular season. And that coach got a pink slip.
Both coaches did, despite all the success they've had, yes.
So far, all we've had here is Todd Reardon getting scapegoated last year for the failures of the power play. They've really made no significant. You can't tell me Lars Eller is a significant move. This team is very close to rock bottom, and they don't seem to really want to do anything to try to dig themselves out of it.
We got to take a break on that note. We'll open up the phone lines at 412-575-2600. I'll also talk about the Steelers who go to Cleveland 0-3 in their last 3 visits to Cleveland on a Thursday night. That's what they're trying to get past. We'll talk about what's going on with the Steelers as they will head there tomorrow. In the meantime, call us. Air your opinions. We love to hear from you. It's the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call right here on KDKA Plus and 93.7 The Fan. All right, welcome back. Our GMC Sierra tweet of the night comes from PFF on the Steelers. Peyton Wilson against the Ravens with a 92.5 grade, 4 targets, 3 receiving yards, 1 interception. He's very good going down the field and covering guys out of the backfield, which was the plan with him. He knew he was going to get that action against Justice Hill, and he did. And if you believe in PFF, and I don't know if you do or don't, Andrew, but they have some different numbers for Russell Wilson, who happened to be dead last among quarterbacks this week. I'm not sure what they utilize. I saw all that, and I'm thinking, okay, what is the formula for this? Now listen, they didn't score an offensive touchdown, so that obviously figures in on it. What else do you think is part of that? An end zone interception, the way he threw it, what else?
Well, I don't really think, other than one throw down the sideline to George Pickens and one up the seam to Darnell Washington, really didn't see Russell Wilson make the kind of plays that he did the first couple of weeks as Steelers starter and some of the clutch plays he made to beat Washington. I mean, I really believe this. If the Ravens had just played a decent game offensively and everything else is the same and the Steelers lose, I think we would have spent the last 2 days talking about Russell Wilson because, Bob, they scored, 9 points off of turnovers, all field goals? Mm-hmm. With the interception by Wilson, the forced fumble by Patrick Queen, which gave them a very short field right up in the red zone, and then the great play Nick Herbig made very early in the game. So at least 2 of those were already in Chris Boswell range. That means that really on their own, they scored 9 points in this game. I mean, that's going back to the dark ages of where we were with Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, and that whole part that we try to forget about recent Steelers history. Yes, it was, in my opinion, a bit concerning. I'm going to give Russell Wilson a mulligan just because of his resume. But if it happens again against Cleveland, well, then it turns into a pattern. And then I really think it's worth a conversation about where he's really at and what he's really doing as Steelers quarterback.
A lot of people have called tonight. Let's get right to it. Rattle off some calls, beginning with David in Finleyville, our number 1 Cochrane Go One Better caller of the night. David, what's up?
Thanks for taking my call. I'd like yours and Andrew's opinion on if you see any changes coming to the Penguins, and if there's any trades you might think might happen. Thank you.
I mean, that's a hard thing because of so many players with no trade clauses. They've brought up some young guys, and we saw them again. Pickering's been in the lineup the last couple of days. Sam Poulin's been in the lineup, and I'm sure you're going to see others, but I don't know what else you can do unless you get permission from players who have no. If you're talking about a big trade, I'm not talking about some, Lars Eller type of trade. Fine, they got rid of him and they got something in return, but I'm talking about something bigger than that. I do not see that happening, at least during the regular season. Do you, Andrew?
Marcus Pettersson is going to get traded because he is in the last year of his contract, and they're going to be able to get a young asset back for him. And then if they want to try to re-sign him in the offseason, they can go ahead and do that. But I would bet a lot of money that in the next few months he's gone. I mean, that to me is a fait accompli. That's a done deal. The next guy is a little bit more interesting. I think that if Raquel can continue to produce, because they've got no allegiance or long-term attachment to him. He didn't win Stanley Cups here. He was brought in by Ron Hextall. Maybe they can spin him into being a player that teams would covet trying to chase a Stanley Cup. So those would be the two names that spring to mind. Bob, I'm still not sold at all on. I heard you mention today with Joe, why not go to Chris Letang and ask him to waive his no movement clause? The second that happens, I think he's gone. Why would he want to play here anymore If that's where their head's at, if they came to me and said, "Hey, would you move your no trade clause?" I would say, not only do I want you to move it now, get rid of me, because you've already. If you're willing to come to me and ask, that means your preference is to not have me on the team anymore. So let's make it happen. Get me out of here.
I also think it's how this team is headed. They all know where it's headed right now. And just like a lot of teams before then who have aged out and they go down this hill, look how long it takes to get back. Look how long it takes Detroit, which hasn't been back to the playoffs. Look how long it takes Chicago, even with Connor Bedard and others. Look how long it takes Anaheim. They haven't overcome who they had out there. So, I mean, it is a long road back unless you somehow figure out a way to bring in assets that can help you pretty quickly. Back to the lines we go, and we have JB in Squirrel Hill. Hey, JB.
Hey, how are you guys?
Good. What's up?
Good. A few comments on the Penguin game. In the overtime, they lost every single face-off.
Yeah, they did.
I mean, they had zero. To me, that just means you have no heart, no grit, and no will. Also, Jari being interviewed. The guy's a total imbecile. Did you hear what he said?
I didn't hear his interview, no. Yeah,
he said, I think we got outplayed in the third. Really? You gave up two-goal lead, dude.
Yeah,
and Dubas should be held accountable for signing him. It's an indictment of Dubas.
It's not just him, but Ryan Graves was another scratch. Kevin Hayes not playing. Ryan Graves has just been a disappointment in every possible way. And for that matter, Carlson, who again went through a game tonight with not much impact on it at all. And for paying him $11 million a year, they expected much more, and now they have a lot of guys who are in that situation, Andrew. So that's why I said I don't know how many. Maybe Carlson would want to move on. I don't know. It's going to take a request.
No one's going to want that contract.
Unless you
They'd have
pick
to
up
eat
some of it,
several
you
million.
can still save money.
Exactly. You'd have to eat several million and have dead money on your team. And he's like dead money right now, actually. But Bob, the other thing about this horrible situation they find themselves in, this is worth repeating. They've got Evgeny Malkin and Sidney Crosby healthy. It's now 2.25 years where those guys have played every single game. I mean, when this team used to struggle or when we used to have concerns about them, it would be related to the health of both of those players. Right. Those guys now into their mid to late 30s, knock on wood, good for them, they're durable. And they've got nothing to show for it. In fact, it's going the other direction. They're getting worse with both of those guys playing every game.
Yep. We have a tweet here, a lot of tweets. Ryan Zedek on Twitter, he says, guys, notice the Boston Bruins fired head coach despite Boston making the playoffs and winning a series last season. We talked about that earlier. Montgomery's out. Cassidy before him was out. Cassidy's now landed in Vegas and done a pretty good job there. So
won a cup.
Yeah, these expectations are, for them, a lot higher than apparently they are right here. And again, to me, it's somewhat of a conundrum unless they figure out ways to get out from him. That's on Kyle Dubas. Back to the lines, we got Ed in Carrick. Hello, Ed. How are you?
Hey, Bob. How you doing? Hi, Flip. Hey, Bob. When I went to that Steelers and Baltimore game Sunday, in the fourth quarter when Lamar Jackson was sacked on the ground, he threw the ball, they called it a completed pass. Why didn't Tomlin challenge that? And the Penguins, they're done. They're too old. They're history.
Yeah, but I knew that several years ago, when they re-signed a lot of these guys, hoping for one last opportunity. Like that window was still open, but how much was it open? And they didn't really do anything. If you look at the signings that they've made since then, Andrew, there haven't been many, good signings that Kyle Dubas has made. Riley Smith is gone. They're still paying him. They have guys that they've brought in here who are not making any sort of impression whatsoever. And so if you're going to add, you better add the right people. He so far hasn't done that.
I've never seen a GM pivot faster in my entire life. The guy came here and said, I believe I'm going to bet on Sidney Crosby, Mike Sullivan, and these guys. They still can win. Made short-term moves to try to win, and almost immediately said, oops, I was wrong, and started trying to dump contracts. And he filled out his roster this year by signing guys to one-year deals, Bob. I mean, they didn't attack this offseason and try to win a Stanley Cup or compete for one. They did it almost like biding their time and waiting for all these older players to age out and then rebuild. They're stuck in this horrible hockey purgatory, and it was made worse by Dubas betting on them to win and it blowing up in his face almost overnight.
Yeah, and they're facing now several years of maybe the same stuff, if not getting worse. We got to take a break on that note, come back with more. It's the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. We're live every single night of the week right here on KDKA+. Most nights 93.7 The Fan, back in a flash.